So one of the key ideas of Karl Marx is that a capitalist society is divided into two classes, the bourgeoisie, or the rich, and the proletariat, or the working class. The bourgeoisie exploit the proletariat to increase their capital and maintain control by seizing control of social institutions like religion, government, and education. This prevents the working class from coming together and
Okay, I'm back, boys. Damn, that Wendy's was hitting.
Oh, thank God, Joe. Please change the topic to anything else.
That may be the happiest I've ever heard you be to hear from me.
Gentlemen, I had a revelation while I was eating. There is another DLC mission in Mass Effect 1 that should have been covered. It's called Pinnacle Station.
Never heard of it.
Not surprising, the source code to Pinnacle Station was corrupted and would have taken months for BioWare to recreate. As such, it was excluded from the Legendary Edition. Plus, it's not all that popular, even within the Mass Effect community. Almost no one minded it being left out, though some modders managed to get it back in the remaster.
Unlike most DLC, Pinnacle Station doesn't have much in the way of the story. You go to a Spectre military training facility where you meet Admiral Ahern, a vet of the First Contact War.
If I remember correctly, the gameplay is just completing all of the combat simulator trials. Now that I think about it, it's a lot like the combat sim from the Citadel DLC. There are 4 modes: capture, survival, hunt, and time trial, each with its map.
That's it, really?
You also get an apartment if you complete the hardest challenge, a simulation of a real fight from the First Contact War, and to be fair, it is pretty hard.
Is this mission something we'll miss?
Not really. As Bernie said, there wasn't much discourse when we found out that Pinnacle Station wouldn't be in the Legendary Edition. Everyone pretty much shrugged and moved along. Combat and gameplay are not Mass Effect 1's strongest points, and Pinnacle Station makes that abundantly clear. I'd rather play Andromeda. At least that has the gameplay to back up having awful story elements.
Is it time to move on to Mass Effect 2?
That it is. We'll start with the first mission, which is technically 2 scenes combined into one. Prologue Save Joker and Prologue Awakening.
The beginning cutscene is a great start. We're just going through space looking for Geth, and then boom! A huge ship appears out of nowhere and starts tearing the Normandy apart.
Seeing the precious Normandy SR-1, the finest ship in the Alliance, get taken out was heartbreaking.
A lot goes down here all at once. First, Navigator Presley and another member of the Normandy crew just fall over and die, and the whole ship starts burning as we watch Liara or the Vermeer survivor running looking for Shepard.
I got mixed feelings on this going forward. On the one hand, walking around the CIC in silence, seeing space through the destroyed ceiling, is a legendary point of view. However, I believe the death of Shepard was the first spark that led the Mass Effect trilogy to its poor conclusion.
Shepard's death allowed BioWare to do a fresh restart on almost everything Mass Effect 1 did. It pretty much destroyed all of the progress made in the overall narrative up to this point. We end up retreading a lot of old territory in 2 because Shepard died, such as team building again and having to go through the trouble of getting the Council's trust for the second time.
I still think watching Shepard plummet to the world below was a haunting sight and a great way to start the game. Next, we get to the cutscene watching Shepard's reconstruction and revival thanks to Miranda.
God, what I wouldn't give to wake up and see Miranda looking down on me like that.
Barack.
Oh, Michelle is here.
Gentlemen, I'll be borrowing Barack for a bit.
Anyway, the start to Prologue Awakening is all right. Immediately you jump out of bed and have to get to work. The station you're on is under attack and you have to make it to Miranda, who is guiding you through the mission.
A good way to sneak in a tutorial for the game. As we move on, we pass by a bunch of dead bodies of the Cerberus employees at the Lazarus station. Things are really going down. Then we have the unfortunate pleasure of meeting up with Jacob Taylor.
At least Jacob is honest enough to tell us he's with Cerberus, unlike Wilson.
Speaking of Wilson, Miranda's first appearance is immediately offing the guy for being a filthy rat.
This mission concludes with us leaving the Lazarus station and having our first meeting with the elusive man.
As far as openings go, this mission doesn't match up to Eden Prime. The death of Shepard is contrived, and so is their revival. The destruction of the Normandy makes a decent set piece, but it's a shame that instead of continuing to build up the Normandy crew, we lost all of them besides Joker, Chakwas, and Adams.
The vibes of this mission are telling me it goes in D tier. It's short and basically serves as a tutorial, but I think Barack is a little too preoccupied to place it.
No, I'm here. I don't think I'll be talking about Miranda anymore. Let's just put the prologue in D tier and head on to Freedom's Progress.
Interesting premise here. We're going to investigate a colony that's been abducted, and when you arrive there, the place is seemingly devoid of life.
That is until we encounter some quarians, one of which bears a familiar, I was going to say face but helmet, I suppose?
Oh yeah, how nice of BioWare to reintroduce us to a squad mate, starting with Tally, all grown up and leading her own team.
Significant development for Tally here. When we last saw her, she was just a kid trying to get through her pilgrimage, but not only is Tally now in charge, she's commanding them with respect. I started clapping my hands when she told one of her people to either listen or take their ass back to the ship.
The quarians are here looking for one of their own, a kid named Vidor. But before getting to him, we must get through the drones and mechs that Vidor has taken control of.
Now that I think about it, Vidor technically killed many of his people by reprogramming the heavy mech.
BioWare designed the fight with the heavy mech wisely, giving us Miranda and Jacob as our first two squad mates so we could get used to using powers and ammo types to weaken shields and armor before attacking health directly.
You should have seen Joe trying to fight it earlier. Bro kept charging into it and getting blown up.
What else are you supposed to do?
Use the static cover to rotate around the mech as you shoot at it. I know Vanguard players like to unga-bunga their way through the game, but you have to turn your brain on at least a little bit.
Joe being bad at the game aside, Freedom's progress ends with us learning who abducted our people, the Collectors, a new race of alien traders many don't know about. After talking about them, we can let Tally keep Vidor or send him to Cerberus.
I won't lie, I did send the kid to Cerberus on my first run, and even I have to say that I felt bad when we saw him again on Tally's loyalty mission.
Oh, Donald, I think your tiny Grinch-sized heart grew a little.
Don't get used to it.
Freedom's Progress is a decent mission. We're still in the prologue, and even though it reintroduces us to Tally, she can't rejoin us quite yet. I think the mission should go in C tier.
Agreed. The prologue of Mass Effect 2 is pretty weak compared to 1 and 3, if I'm being honest.
The combat isn't really that good either, and I hate fighting the drones.
C tier it is, and we're finally into the first wave of recruitment missions. The game strongly advises you to begin with Dossier the Professor, which is Morden's recruitment mission. So we'll start there.
Now we're into the good stuff. Before entering the quarantine zone, we have Shepard flexing the fact that they have a grenade launcher strapped to their back when a Turian tries to stop them from entering. About time people finally start respecting the one true law of society, bigger gun diplomacy.
Pretty funny that you can potentially bring Grunt and Garrus on this mission about the plague that kills all other aliens besides Vorcha and humans. Probably a good thing Tally didn't come with us on Freedom's Progress.
The atmosphere of this mission is immaculate. Walking in, you immediately see burning bodies and come across 2 dead Turians that were trapped in a room and left to die by the blue suns. As you listen to the logs, the Turian documents the death of another individual named Dalus. But his sickness makes him hallucinate. He still hears his friend talking, and he muses that no one should die alone, like he is right now.
You also come across a Batarian suffering from illness. This is maybe the one time I save a Batarian instead of killing him.
Speak for yourself. I walk right by that guy every time.
Not long after this, you'll hear your alien squad mate start coughing from the side effects of the plague. Garrus only says, "That's not good," and Grunt is defiant in saying, "I don't get sick." I'm glad BioWare called attention to the fact that alien squad mates are, in fact, not immune to the plague.
Moving along, you come across looters, humans hiding, and more dead people, and you have to fight through Blue Suns and Blood Pack members, but eventually reach Morden's clinic. And now we get to meet one of the best written characters in the trilogy. First, if you have alien squad mates, Morden will immediately treat them so they don't die, demonstrating his skill in medicine.
Listening to Morden rattle off like a lawnmower was a great way to establish his character. The dude is a hamster on coffee.
Before Morden joins us, we'll have to turn the air back on and dispense the cure to the plague, and Morden asks us to keep a lookout for his assistant, who we find has been captured by Batarians who suspect him of spreading the plague.
You can miss this, but if you find him, you strike a deal with the Batarians to let Daniel go. I uphold my part of the deal most of the time.
I want to talk about the combat here for a moment. This mission and many others have a real problem with putting enemies on high-up ledges that Shepard can't get to with cover that makes it difficult even to shoot foes. Never mind that Vanguard is straight-up helpless a lot of the time.
I agree, it's a problem. One of the few things that Andromeda did right was let Ryder jump. Fighting the enemies in environmental control is pretty annoying. More enemies on ledges and tons of enemies funnel out of the fan control room.
Yeah, I may as well get it out the way now. Mass Effect 2's approach to combat is just having enemies come out in waves over time, which kind of blows.
Thankfully, you can speed run this section on Vanguard and Infiltrator, skipping straight to the controls and ending the mission. Now we have Morden on our squad and can move on.
I'd put Morden's mission in B tier. The atmosphere is excellent, and Morden's characterization is established well early on. Still, I gotta say, I don't enjoy actually playing the mission, if you understand what I mean.
I'll co-sign that.
Since we're on Omega, we'll move on to Dossier Archangel, obviously a fan favorite because of the character it involves. But it is a well-crafted mission, too. First, we talk to Arya to get information on Archangel, who is being hunted by the three big merc groups in the Terminus systems, the Blue Suns, Bloodpack, and Eclipse.
This mission brings back some of the sorely missing roleplay elements. As you sign up to join the mercs, you can show this kid their gun is defective and tell them to sit things out or ignore him and allow him to take the risk against Archangel.
Once you meet up with the merc groups, you get to explore and talk to all of the major commanders on the Archangel assignment, giving us great world building as we learn about all three major factions we'll be dealing with in Mass Effect 2. All of the leaders on this mission have their stake with Archangel. Jiroth hates him because Archangel killed his brother. Garm is tired of Archangel killing his men and ruining his business, and Tarek is scared for his life. Kind of a step down to go from the so-called vanguard of our destruction to just some street thugs.
Indeed, the stakes here have definitely gone down.
Before you get to Archangel, you get the best renegade interrupt in the series.
You're working too hard.
Even a bleeding heart paragon like myself smashes that interruption, plus it weakens the helicopter for later.
As you rush up to meet with Archangel, the puzzle pieces start coming together. An idealistic Turian in blue armor and uses a sniper rifle. Just before the camera pans up, you realize it's Garrus.
All right, not gonna lie. Seeing Garrus as the badass mercenary was a neat surprise. He may be a knockoff of Batman, but at least he's doing something interesting now.
Too bad this completely invalidates your choice to make Garrus more Paragon in Mass Effect 1, but still, it's a neat reveal. If you've read the comics, this moment is elevated because Garrus had given up hope and knew his time was up and was having one last talk with his dad. Then he saw Shepard and said the odds just changed in his favor.
But just as I'd expect from a Garrus-related mission, things go back to being boring because now we're literally playing tower defense as multiple waves of enemies walk across the bridge for 10 minutes.
Honestly, you're right. This section of combat is very unengaging.
On the bright side, you can hack the mech and have that take care of a lot of the shooting for you.
The combat doesn't get much better after this either. Shutting the doors in the basement is annoying. One area is a long corridor with a flamethrower Vorcha in the way, and it's aggravating as fuck.
Jesus, Joe, you're so bad at the game that you can't handle a single Bloodpack Vorcha?
Nah, no way, Donald. You're capping if you're trying to tell me that the basement section of Garrus's recruitment mission isn't stupid hard.
No, it is hard. I'm just built different.
All right, bro. I can't wait to see your gaming skills one of these days.
After finally shutting the doors, you run back to assist Garrus, and then the helicopter shows up and Garrus gets lit up.
How did he survive all those bullets and a missile explosion?
Rex dies to a few shots from Ashley's gun. Garrus stronger than Rex confirmed.
Oh no, we are not power scaling the Mass Effect squad mates. Don't even start that, Joe.
We take out the gunship and the remaining Blue Suns and hurried Garrus back to the Normandy, where he quickly recovered, albeit with some scars.
Honestly, not a bad mission. World building is great. Roleplay elements make a short return, and although the mission can be annoying at times, it's still a good challenge. B tier in my books.
I would put it in B tier myself as well.
C tier, the bridge section of this mission is boring. Just sit in one place and shoot. One of the worst aspects of Mass Effect 2's gameplay is its over-reliance on cover shooting.
It's A tier for me. I think the mission does a good job at everything besides the combat, and even that isn't too bad. Plus, you get unique dialogue if you bring Zaid and Grunt to this mission.
Averaging it out, I think we'll have to give this mission B tier. I think we should tackle Jack's recruitment mission next. It's called Dossier the Convict.
A trip to Space Alcatraz to pick up a squad mate. I'm sure this will be fun.
At the start of the mission, we get a nice tour of the prison and get to learn about it. Warden Kurl started purgatory after he got tired of seeing criminals escape as a cop on Palaven. This is almost like a look into what Garrus could have become if he were left to his own devices.
Kurl obviously betrays us so he can profit off us. Naturally, that doesn't happen, and we fight to go meet up with Jack. I'll say this is probably the best introduction to any squad mate in the trilogy. The entire time we heard about Jack, BioWare cleverly refused to clue us into their gender, so I was expecting a man just to see the beautiful woman rise from the smoke.
What is with you and bald women, Joe?
She's not bald, Donald, and I told you what I'd do to you if you badmouthed Jack in front of me again.
You can get him later, Joe. Jack comes out of cryo and just goes monkey mode. She runs and casually destroys 3 heavy mechs with a single biotic charge.
A bit of false advertising there. Jack seems unstoppable in cutscenes, but she's one of the frailest squad mates in the game. She dies more often than Tally and Morden.
It really doesn't make sense for her to wield a shotgun without some defensive ability. Grunt gets fortification, Jacob gets barrier, and Tally gets energy drain. Jack struggles in gameplay, especially on insanity.
We follow Jack's path of destruction and end up fighting the guards of Purgatory and the prisoners that Jack set free during her rampage. The atmosphere is probably at its best here. Everything is chaotic, matching the nature of Jack's theme music.
The combat here is mid, though. You walk through straight hallways and fight the prisoners and guards.
What do you guys think of the final fight against Karl? I'm not too big a fan of it, to be honest.
It's decent. Having to take out the shield generators to attack Karl at least added some depth into what would have otherwise been another shoot them until they die mini-boss.
After beating Karl, we catch up with Jack while she's throwing a temper tantrum over seeing a Cerberus ship.
Just look at her, all crazy and stuff, so perfect.
Joe, Jack would unironically turn you into a puddle of soup if you ever tried to hit her up.
At least I'd die happy.
Catching up with Jack, she's unsurprisingly not very cooperative. You can potentially threaten to knock her out, at which point Jack will say you may as well get ready to kill her then. Badass introduction to this character.
A-tier mission, despite the simple combat terrain, the introduction to Jack is immaculate, and the atmosphere of the prison break is peak.
I agree with you. Even if the combat is a bit dull, I still enjoy playing it more than the Archangel and Professor missions.
I suppose I'll concede and say the Jack mission is A-tier.
I guess there really is a first time for everything.
The last of the first wave of recruitment missions is Dossier, the warlord. We're tasked with recruiting Dr. Okier, a Krogan who fought in the Krogan rebellions, so he's one of the oldest characters we've met in the games.
Wait, Dr. Okier? There's a Krogan doctor?
Contrary to popular belief and contrary to Morden's scoffing at the notion of Krogan scientists, yes, Krogan do have doctors.
This is probably the weakest of the recruitment missions. It lacks the atmosphere built up in Morden's and Jack's, and doesn't have the world building that we get in Garrus's.
Jador yelling orders over the loudspeaker got old extremely fast. Plus, there aren't any interactions with her like with Kirill, so she's just an annoying voice for the entire mission.
The terrain for the combat is at least better here. Instead of just holding a single point or going in a straight line, you have turns and bends to fight around. Sometimes you come up and the enemy has the high ground advantage on you, forcing you to think more as you fight.
Combat is pretty much all this mission has until you run into Rana Thanoptis, assuming you spared her during Vermeer. She's up to no good yet again, but it's too late to kill her now. Then you meet up with Okier, who has been expecting us.
Okier has an interesting outlook on the genophage. He approves of our destruction of Saren's cure, acknowledging that Saren's horde would not be true Krogan. Okier claims that surviving the genophage doesn't create strong Krogan. His experiments aim to create a Krogan that could ignore the genophage, one that would be a pure and perfect Krogan specimen.
But Jador starts filling Okier's lab with gas, and we must stop her. Unfortunately, this mini-boss is horrible, just horrible.
It's worse than Kirill. You kill all the Krogan that come out of the pod, kill a mech, and then kill Jador, who's cowering on the other side of the area.
Back up to Okier, and he's, well, dead. But he managed to leave us one gift, his legacy, Grunt. We bring him back to the Normandy, where we get to choose between waking him up or leaving him in the pod forever so Cerberus can take him.
Obviously, you wake him, and what does Grunt do when you get him out of bed? He gives Papa Trump a big old bear hug.
More like a car accident. Shepard really ate that tackle.
Here, Shepard must command Grunt's respect. You can do it with your words or with a gun. Either way, Grunt falls in line and becomes a squad member. I agree with what Bernie said earlier. This is the weakest recruitment mission. We don't get to stick with Okier long enough to learn more about him, and Jador is just a plain Jane antagonist. The best part of the mission is waking Grunt, which technically happens after the recruitment mission ends.
Separating that, you get Grunt from this mission, it's probably D tier. The only highlight is the single renegade moment with the injured merc, That and Grunt are the only things saving it from going into F tier.
Good deal. Now, as per the game's pacing, we move directly on to the Horizon mission, which starts with the elusive man calling us to tell us that the collectors are targeting the colony and that our former squad mate, the Vermeer survivor, is on the planet. Morden completes his countermeasure to the Seeker swarms, and we head off to the planet.
This mission is probably single-handedly responsible for the Vermeer survivors' controversial reception among the Mass Effect fanbase, but we'll get to that later. The mission begins with a cutscene of the colony and our former squad mate being attacked and frozen by the collectors. Honestly, what the collectors do before they capture you is nightmare material. The giant bugs inject you, and you just freeze up. And worse off, you're conscious the entire time.
The mission is essentially a combat gauntlet, and it's not too bad. This is our first encounter with the collectors, and it brings a difficulty spike.
Harbinger occasionally assumes direct control of the collector troops, and I think it's a welcome addition. Unlike most enemies, Harbinger continuously moves toward you, and its attacks force you out of cover and burn you.
Pretty annoying to me. Even after you kill one Harbinger, another one takes its place.
Learn how to play the game, Joe Jesus. Focus the other collector troops while ducking Harbinger and then finish him off so you only have to deal with one.
Sorry, Donald, I'm too busy actually being the president to get good at Mass Effect's campaign.
Later on, you run into a mechanic who managed to hide from the collectors. Delon clues us into how the humans in the Terminus feel about the Alliance. He blames the Alliance for placing the defensive towers there, believing they drew attention to the Horizon colony. We move on and get to what I think many would consider the most insane difficulty spike in the Mass Effect trilogy.
The final area of Horizon is hellish if you're unprepared and don't know what to do, especially on Insanity difficulty. If you're playing the Engineer, Adept, or Sentinel classes and haven't gotten the Casa Locust, you're going to have a bad time.
EDI does tell you to take a defensive posture, but it's unclear precisely what that means. There's an area to the left that's your best bet. Otherwise, you'll be flanked from every direction, and your squad won't last long.
Then we get a mini-boss in the form of a Scion, a pretty annoying enemy. I'm glad Harvesters took their place in Mass Effect 3.
Periodically, the Scion will stop taking damage and charge up some barrier health. It wouldn't usually be a problem, except it can do so with like an inch of armor health left, prolonging an already long fight just at the end of it all.
We eventually win the fight, and the collector vessel takes off with half the colony on their ship. We stopped them, but they still got a lot of people.
Except for the Vermeer survivor, which is weird considering we watched them get frozen first. And Lilith, the woman they spoke to, gets taken. Missed opportunity by BioWare here. The collectors should have taken the Vermeer survivor to add some more stake to the suicide mission.
A weird tone change from the Vermeer survivor here. They arrive referring to Shepard as a god, and then they flip the script as soon as we mention Cerberus.
On the one hand, I don't blame the Vermeer survivor for not believing Shepard. But at the same time, they refused to hear us out and consider what we were saying even a little bit.
It's also incredibly annoying that you can't tell them you don't trust Cerberus at all and want to stop the collectors. You can even do this with Tali, and she has faith in you.
People can hate the Vermeer survivor all they want. At least this makes them less of a drone who blindly believes everything Shepard says, and they come around on you in an email later on.
As you'd expect, things don't pan out well with our old squad mate, and we go our separate ways, ending the mission. I believe Horizon to be a pretty good mission. It's our introduction to the collectors. The colony's atmosphere is well done, and it has a decent challenge to it, even if it is a tad annoying. I think this should be an A-tier mission.
I enjoy the mission, and like that, it has good character building for the Vermeer survivor.
Time to hit up our final 3 recruitment missions. Let's start with our old friend Tali, who is leading a research team on Heastrom.
This mission, you know what? I'll let you boys go first.
Any mission with Tali is goated automatically. Also, the music is top tier.
You're spitting, Joe. This is a Tali mission. You get introduced to the man Calrigar himself, and the final area of the mission is awesome, giving you multiple approaches to the Geth Colossus.
This mission also introduces us to the dark energy subplot of the trilogy.
All right, time for me to interject. You cannot rate this mission highly just because it had Tali in it. First, the overheating mechanic is at best negligible or at worst just annoying. I don't even know why it was added. As for the dark energy plotline, that was abandoned, so I don't see how it factors into the ranking.
The mission is intensified by you rushing to save Tali from the Geth. as most of her squad has already been wiped out and Tally is next on the chopping block.
Come on now. We all knew Tally wasn't in any danger the entire time, plus the part where you have to get the explosive charges is just plain stupid. The giant block that falls and blocks the door is like 8 feet tall. Are you telling me Super Soldier N7 Operative Shepard can't hit that pull-up and climb over it?
Hold up, Bernie might be cooking.
Yeah, and I smell it burning. How can he say recruiting Tally is bad?
Remove Tally from the equation and think about the composition of the mission. It's a long combat gauntlet with barely any dialogue. It introduces an abandoned plot line, and the final area isn't all that. It gives you multiple paths, but only really. The left side is worth going over. The middle area is suicide because the Colossus fires on you once you leave cover, and the right area cooks you under the sun. I'm not a fan of the Geth infinitely spawning until you take out the Colossus. The only good thing this mission does is introduce us to the GOAT NPC named Calrigar. Besides that, this mission is excessively mid. Please put Dossier Tally in C tier.
What do you think, gentlemen?
You know what? He's right. Thinking with my brain and not my head, this mission is not great.
Screw you, this mission is still at least A tier.
Typical Tally simp, incapable of seeing reason.
I like to stay as objective as possible, and I think Bernie has a point. Dossier Tally goes in C tier.
God damn it, this is why we should have only limited this to people who have been president instead of including a primary loser president wannabe.
Mad that I bring new fresh ideas to the table, Joe? I was cooking when I said the Citadel DLC was the true ending, and I'm still cooking when I say Tally's recruitment is C tier. Please carry on to the next one, Barack.
We'll do Dossier the Justicar next. This is Samara's recruitment mission.
I stand at attention for the glorious introduction of Samami.
It's a decent mission. We start by learning exactly what a Justicar is, and they're essentially super powerful space paladins that follow a righteous code.
This mission introduces us to some side characters like Pitney 4 and Detective Anaya, who assist us in our search for Samara. I'm fond of Anaya. She's a laid-back Asari detective who doesn't give us much trouble.
We do a little bit of combat and catch up with Samara, who is taking care of some of the Eclipse sisters.
Oh my God, I wish I was the one Samara was stepping on instead of that other Asari.
I'm pretty sure she breaks their neck after this.
At least then I'd die happy.
There's something wrong with both you and Joe.
Anyway, we strike a deal with Samara, help her find the person she's after, and she'll join us. After a brief chat with Pitney 4, we head off looking for our trail to Morinth.
I like the addition of the Minigun X3 canisters that will improve the damage or range of your biotic powers. However, enough of the gas will kill you, encouraging the player to keep moving to new cover.
The layout of the spaceport is dynamic, starting inside with areas of a lot of short cover. And then we transition outside and get to fight while looking at the gorgeous Ilium skyline.
A small shout out to the encounter with Eclipse Sister Elnora. This interaction tests whether the player has been paying attention. Elnora claims to be new to the Eclipse and that she hasn't killed anyone. But if you remember, Pitney 4 tells you that all Eclipse Sisters acquire their uniform by committing a murder. Elnora is definitely in uniform when you see her. As expected, she is guilty. In fact, she's the one who killed Pitney 4's business partner.
It's pretty stupid that you earn renegade points for killing Elnora when it's apparent she's an active murderer and pulls a gun on you.
I just wanted to ask her some questions and then kill her. But Shepard and company just let her run on by. It messed with my full renegade run.
Another flaw of the morality system.
We eventually get a mini-boss against a helicopter, which was pretty lame. Then, we come across some evidence incriminating Pitney 4. If you turn the evidence into Anaya and take care of Elnora, you get a little bonus at the end of the mission.
Our final trial is getting past the one and only biotic god himself.
I almost shit myself when I saw him. I didn't think the Eclipse would call upon the god himself to stop us. But thankfully, Shepard is a devout follower of the biotic god's teachings, and he resolved to help us take out Captain Wasaya.
For a random Eclipse leader, Wasaya is quite cool. I don't know if it's her orange markings, but fighting her always stood out to me.
She's undoubtedly cooler than other Merc leaders like Jador and Garm.
We take out Wasaya, get the information Samara needs, and she swears her loyalty to us.
B-tier mission, we have a few side objectives we can complete. The introduction to Samara is well done, and it brought us the glorious biotic god.
Samami deserves the fattest S tier in the world.
You're just as bad as me, Donald. Put it in B tier.
Now, much like the original release of Mass Effect 2, we'll have to split the second half of the missions into a second disc, if you will. So the last mission we'll cover today is Dossier the Assassin, Thane's recruitment mission.
I believe this mission is the perfect conclusion to the recruitment arc, if you will, of Mass Effect 2. You drive up to the Dantius Towers and immediately meet a squad of mechs that gun down some Solarians. Nasana Dantius, who you might recall from Mass Effect 1, has lost it and is ordering her mechs to massacre her workers out of fear.
We meet up with a poor working-class chap who we can save. He tells us the situation, and we move up the tower. BioWare did a good job building up the mystery of the assassin. As you rescue Solarians, you hear about how he locked them in a room to keep them safe and saved another group from one of the mercs, establishing that this assassin has principles. One of the cooler scenes is hearing two of the mercs talking, and then one of them gets jumped and falls dead right in front of us.
We also get one of the coldest renegade moments in the trilogy where Shepard is interrogating an Eclipse merc, and when he won't talk, we send his ass out the window.
How about goodbye?
Honestly, all interactions in that interrogation are worth it. If you wait, you can pick a renegade dialogue, press the guy up against the glass, and ask him what sound he thinks he'll make when he hits the ground, and if he'll hear it before he dies. Shepard was on that demonic timing with this one.
We have one last area, a windy bridge with tons of mercs and drones on the tower. It's a magnificent scenery, even if it's a straight line. As you grow closer, you can hear Nasana on the loudspeaker, becoming increasingly panicked.
If you met with her in Mass Effect 1, you'll wax nostalgic about how you had to kill her sister and now you're here to kill her. But unfortunately for Nasana, we're not the one she should be worried about.
Thane drops from the ceiling and just casually snaps a guy's neck. Throat punches a second guy, shoots a third, and then puts an end to Nasana. I don't even like Thane like that, and I have to admit that brother came in cold.
It's a goated introduction. The build-up we got on Thane leading up to this cutscene was expertly executed, and having us see his efficiency showed us why he's the galaxy's best assassin.
It was nice of BioWare to finally give women in the Mass Effect community some eye candy. Too bad Thane literally says, "I'm dying," right after looking all majestic in the sunset.
Maybe a hot take, but this is the best recruitment mission. The combat is excellent, the introduction to the squad mate is executed perfectly, and it calls back to Mass Effect 1 with Nasana.
I'm in agreement. It feels like BioWare put their back into it when they crafted this mission. We should put Dossier the Assassin in A tier for being a standout recruitment mission.
No complaints from me.
And with that, we'll take an intermission and complete the rest of Mass Effect 2's missions.